There is a question that haunts every serious student of history. Not how the Holocaust happened, but how it was allowed to happen. How did a modern, educated, culturally rich society, home to philosophers, musicians, scientists and poets, become complicit in the murder of 6 million Jews? This was not a medieval mob driven by superstition. This was 20th century Germany. And, the most chilling truth is this. The Nazis did not rely on madness alone. They relied on persuasion, normalization, silence, and gradual moral collapse. Ordinary people were not suddenly turned into killers overnight. They were groomed, step by step, to accept the unacceptable. Before we go any further, if you value deep, honest history that doesn't look away from uncomfortable truths, take a moment now to like this video. Share it with someone who cares about understanding the past. Comment with your thoughts and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future documentaries like this. Now let's get into the story that explains how genocide was sold as duty. Hatred of Jews did not begin with Hitler, but he weaponized it like no one before him. After Germany's defeat in the First World War, he framed Jews as traitors who had stabbed the nation in the back. Economic collapse, unemployment, political chaos, every crisis was blamed on a hidden Jewish enemy. This wasn't random rage. It was a narrative designed to simplify fear. By reducing complex problems to a single scapegoat, the Nazis gave ordinary Germans someone to blame and someone to hate. Yet even Hitler understood something critical. Most Germans were not ready for mass murder. There was still a sense, however fragile, of decency. That meant the destruction of the Jews had to be introduced gradually, disguised as law, framed as necessity, and removed from everyday view. The first phase was separation. Jews were banned from professions, stripped of citizenship, excluded from schools, and forced out of public life. None of this required killing. It required paperwork. Most Germans watched it happen and did nothing, not because they were sadists, but because it did not yet feel like murder. It felt administrative, legal, temporary. This is where propaganda did its quiet work. Newspapers, posters, films and speeches portrayed Jews as parasites, disease carriers and corrupters of society. Not neighbours, not veterans, not fellow Germans. Once a group is no longer seen as human, cruelty toward them no longer feels like cruelty. Joseph Goebbels understood something fundamental. People believe what surrounds them. Cinema, radio, education, even children's books became tools to repeat the same message until it felt like, common sense. Jews were blamed for war, for inflation, for moral decay. Even when violence escalated, propaganda reframed it as self-defense. Germans were told that Jews were responsible for their own fate, that removal was not cruelty, but protection. The most dangerous propaganda didn't scream. It reassured. It told Germans they were decent people, forced into hard choices by an enemy who left them no alternative. Before the Nazis murdered Jews on an industrial scale, they tested mass killing on their own people. Disabled children and adults were secretly killed under the guise of medical mercy. Doctors, nurses and administrators were trained to obey orders, falsify records, and suppress conscience. When public protest finally broke out, the regime learned a crucial lesson. Killing Germans caused backlash. Killing others far away did not. This shaped everything that followed. When mass shootings of Jews began in Eastern Europe, they were deliberately hidden from the German public. Soldiers wrote letters home describing massacres, but these were whispers, not headlines. Enough people knew to suspect the truth, but not enough to force confrontation. Silence became a form of participation. At the same time, Jews inside Germany were marked, isolated, and deported under the lie of resettlement. They boarded passenger trains, not cattle cars. They were told to bring luggage, food, documents. Deception wasn't just cruelty, it was strategy. It prevented panic, resistance, and sympathy. Genocide did not run on rage alone. It ran on schedules, railways, permits, invoices and quotas. Civil servants arranged transport, engineers designed camps, corporations supplied chemicals. Train drivers moved human cargo, knowing exactly where it was going. Each person told themselves the same lie. I'm only doing my part. This is how murder became routine. When responsibility is divided into small tasks, no one feels guilty for the final result. There were moments of resistance, but they were rare. By the time the truth was undeniable, Germany was at war, cities were burning, sons were dying at the front. Survival narrowed moral vision. Many chose not to know because knowing demanded action, and action demanded courage most people did not believe they possessed. The most terrifying lesson is not that evil existed, but that it thrived on apathy, conformity, and self-interest. Even as millions were murdered, Nazi leaders insisted this was a moral duty. In private, they admitted it could never be spoken of publicly. That alone proves they knew it was wrong. The German people were never forced at gunpoint to believe the lies. They were eased into them, rewarded for compliance and shielded from consequences. That is how an entire nation was groomed, not through madness, but through method. This history matters because it did not require monsters. It required ordinary people choosing comfort over conscience. If you found this documentary valuable, share it. These stories only matter if they are remembered. Subscribe to the channel for more deep, uncompromising history, and let me know in the comments what part of this story disturbed you the most. Silence helped make this crime possible. Understanding is how we make sure it never happens again.